Okay, thank you everyone for coming. We're going to have a number of other senators and assembly members join us in the next few minutes, but in the interest of time, we are going to begin. My name is Zohran Mamdani, and I am so excited to be here alongside my colleagues in the Senate and in the Assembly to talk about the historic investments that were secured in the One House budget and how those need to be protected in the final budget. Namely, the rejection of a fare hike to $3 and a $50 million funding of a first-of-its-kind free bus pilot of 10 free bus routes across New York City. So to kick us off is the prime sponsor in the Senate, Deputy Majority Leader Mike Gianaris.
Thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate the support we've gotten from both houses of the legislature represented here. I know more are coming, but being the end of March, there's a lot going on, and everyone's going to be in and out, including myself. So I appreciate Assemblymember Mamdani organizing this and pushing this plan for several months now. We have been out there on the streets talking to New Yorkers about what they need, about what they want. The MTA and the mass transit system in New York is vital to the city coming back and the metropolitan region coming back after the pandemic. We want people back in their offices. We want people to get on the subways. We want people to get on buses. Well, then the subways and the buses have to work in a way that New Yorkers need them to work. And that's why I'm proud the Assembly and Senate got together. We actually joined forces and all agreed in our One House budget proposals that there should not be a fare hike to make it more difficult for people to get on the mass transit system and access it, and that we should actually start experimenting with making buses free throughout New York City. 2 free bus routes per borough in a pilot program that both houses support, and it will revolutionize the way people get around the city. It will encourage people to get back on the buses, get on the subways, and ultimately will make things safer as well as move people throughout the city better. And I want to say a word about safety because there's been much attention to crime in the subways and public safety in the subways. Well, one of the vital components to people feeling safe when they're on subways and on buses is that there are other people around them, other people who help look out for each other. And if ridership goes up, safety will increase. And what we're trying to do here is encourage people, not make it more difficult for them to access mass transit. Don't raise fares, which will get fewer people riding the subways. Make the buses free so that more people will get on buses, and ultimately that will lead to a safer New York and a better New York. So thank you again to all my colleagues, and I look forward in the next 10 days to getting this done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And next up, we are going to hear from the chair of the Black, Puerto Rican, and Hispanic Task Force, Micael Solar.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We're saying loud and clear, we need to make an investment into the MTA, making sure that all New Yorkers have access to public transportation, because we know that it's a public good. So if you want to do good this budget, invest into the MTA, right?
That's right.
And so I thank all my colleagues, and especially Mr. Mamdani, for really championing this issue. It's so important. And so as chair of the Black, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, and Asian Caucus, we stand by this proposal. We look forward to advocating for it, and we want to get it done. So thank you.
And when we're talking about this unprecedented pilot for free buses, we have had a champion in the Senate in Senator John Liu.
Want to say pilot? I'm delighted to join my colleagues here. I'll make it brief because it's very simple. We got to fix the MTA. Even the MTA says we got to fix the MTA. And the key thing that we need are riders. All the riders back, relying on transit, relying on our buses and subways. No better way than to hold the line on the fare. No fare increase. That's right. And let's start figuring out how to make the buses free. Free buses means safer buses, it means faster buses, and that's what all New Yorkers want. Let's get it done. Fix the MTA. I was going to pick up the poster, but it got stuck.
And now we are going to hear from someone who has been championing the need to fix the MTA for years in our Assembly House, Bobby Carroll.
Thank you, Zoran, and good morning. Making sure the MTA is on solid financial footing is essential for the recovery of New York City. If we do not find a way to shore up the capital budget of the MTA and we have service reduction and fare increases, it is going to be so much harder to get people back on buses and subways, back to school, back to jobs, back to entertainment. It is essential to save New York, to love New York, is to love and save the MTA. And that is why we've got to make sure we shore up this budget. And it only makes sense when the vast majority of bus riders are on a reduced fare, are students, are people with disabilities, or people transferring to the subway to make that fare free. That would cost $400 million every year. It's an easy fix. It'll make the buses faster and safer, as so many others have said. So let's fund the MTA, let's shore up its capital budget for the next 4 years, and let's make sure our buses are free. Thank you so much.
And now I'm going to pass it over to a colleague and a comrade, State Senator Julia Salazar.
Thank you, Assemblymember Mamdani. Good morning, everyone. You know, it isn't just New York City's economy that relies on the MTA to function, but our entire state economy actually relies on having a functional public transit system in the MTA. But we take it for granted. In Albany, we have, unfortunately, a legacy of austerity in the state budget. It doesn't need to be that way. We have the opportunity and the responsibility this year to take seriously the problems that the MTA is facing and to fully invest in fixing the MTA and making it more affordable to New Yorkers. Right now, New Yorkers who rely on public transit in New York City every single day or to get to the city already cannot afford the fare. The last thing that they need right now is to be burdened with a fare increase. Instead, we have a responsibility at the state level to invest in the MTA, to get rid of the MTA's substantial, about $2.5 billion operating deficit. And we have the chance with just 1.5% of the state budget, we could fix the MTA and make it more affordable and more accessible to New Yorkers. And we have an obligation in the state budget this year to get it done. Thank you.
Woo! Now please join me in welcoming the chair of our Housing Committee on the Assembly side, Linda Rosenthal.
Thank you, Zoran. Thank you for pulling all of us together on this vital issue. You know, in the past, we had to try to put MTA funding in a lockbox because it was such low priority that previous governors would steal from it, put it in the general fund, and look where we are today. On my district, on the Upper West Side and parts of Hell's Kitchen, if you want a salad, it's like $16. How can people who are low income, working poor, going to get to their jobs, going to get to their medical appointments with a fare increase? We cannot have a fare increase. $3 is a lot of money. So, as everyone here has said, fund the MTA. Have free buses. In my district, there are a lot of older adults who use the buses all the time, but we've been de-investing in buses as well, and people have to wait on unreliable service when the buses take you where you want to go. So let's have some common sense here. Let's fund the MTA, which is a cliche lifeblood of the city, and let's get this done. We can't just keep talking about miserable conditions in the subway. Let's fix it. Let's fix the MTA. Thank you.
Now we're going to go from Manhattan to Brooklyn. Please join me in welcoming State Senator Jabari Brisport.
Good morning, everybody. It's really exciting to be here. What I've loved from this campaign and this fight to fix the MTA is educating our constituents across New York City, across New York, about the real problem, which is austerity, right? Your bus is late, you want to blame the bus driver, your train is packed, you want to blame the conductor. We have systemic issues caused by austerity and not investing enough into our public transit, which is the primary form of transit for working class New Yorkers. So it's really important that we're here to fight for this. We spend a lot of time talking about potholes and gas prices, yes, but also about public transit. You know, the governor was pushing for hundreds of millions of dollars to lower gas prices for New Yorkers last year. We can afford hundreds of millions of dollars to avoid a fare hike. So let's do it, let's fix the MTA, and let's go. Woo!
Thank you so much, and now we're going to be hearing from somebody who's been fighting the progressive fight here in Albany for longer than I've even been serving, and that is Assemblymember Harvey Epstein.
Yeah! Thank you, Zoran. My name is Harvey Epstein, east side of Manhattan, and I want to think about imagining a better world, right? Let's think about how we could have free buses, free subways for New Yorkers. What would that look like? We do it right now for the Staten Island Ferry. So if it's good enough for Staten Islanders, it should be good enough for New Yorkers.
That's right.
We can build a better New York, a New York that's for all of us. We can make CUNY free. We can fix the MTA. We can make sure our school system works. We can do it with a progressive view of the world, taxing people who've got more money so they can give back to others who can have a better life. That's what we're talking about. That's what fixing the MTA is about. It's setting a standard for the future that says New Yorkers, regular New Yorkers, working class New Yorkers matter, and we're going to do something that speaks to them and makes their lives better. I want to thank you all for being here with my colleagues and make sure we get this done in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to keep it in Manhattan with Senator Kristen Gonzalez.
Oh no, we're not starting this tour for today. Hi everyone. It's so good to be here. My name is Kristen Gonzalez, and I represent the lovely Tri-Borough District of District 59. And I'm really proud to stand with all of these legislators who have been doing the work in both houses for years around the MTA. And as a new legislator, I am seeing their leadership and seeing that we are almost there. The next 2 weeks are critical, and that's why we're all standing together this morning to say, like you heard from Assemblymember Epstein, it is possible that we can invest in our MTA, that we can reimagine what our transit system looks like to help provide the society that we want to see for all working New Yorkers. And I know you've heard a lot about why it's important this morning, but I also want to talk about how proud I am in our One House budget that we really took approaches that work. For example, the proposal for MSG, as a Manhattanite also, having that fund the MTA would be critical, or rejecting things like a mobility tax to make sure that we're taxing corporations instead, because we know that when we raise revenue and we ask corporations to pay, that we can bring justice to working class New Yorkers and give them the transit system they deserve. So we're almost there, and because of all the work that these incredible people have been doing day after day and in the last few months, I know and am confident that we will win, but we have to keep fighting even beyond that. Because it doesn't stop with just investing in our MTA. It continues to building the entire society that we want to see. All of the things, like you said, it's intersectional, workers' rights, housing justice. It's an issue of climate. We want our transit to run on renewables. Yes. I'm looking at Assemblymember Gallagher. But again, thank you all so much for having us. And what do we want to do?
Fix
the
MTA!
Thank you.
Woo! So we've heard from so many about the need to stop the fare hike, about the need to fund a free bus pilot. There's also a missing piece of the puzzle, and that has been led and championed by my colleague, Assemblywoman Jessica Gonzalez Rojas.
I think we're talking about 6-minute service. Hi, everyone. My name is Assemblymember Jessica Gonzalez Rojas. I represent Jackson Heights, East Elmhurst, Corona, Woodside, and Astoria. And I say those communities because I am fighting for my working class constituents, the 135,000 constituents, but not just for them, but also for all New Yorkers and, quite honestly, my own family. I am a proud strap hanger. I am someone that uses the system every day that I fight for. And it is critical that we continue to make investments and think of the MTA as the public good that it is. So I'm thrilled that in our one house, and I want to thank our speaker and all my colleagues for fighting, that we're investing in bus pilot services to look at what does a free bus look like, right? We saw during COVID what that looked like. Ease of in and out, the bus ran more frequently, the drivers were happier, they didn't have to negotiate and fight around fares. We saw how it moved quicker. So we're thrilled about this pilot. We're thrilled about staving off the $3 increase. But one thing I have to say that we have to continue to invest in is to ensure that we have frequency of service. It is a public safety issue, it is an economic justice issue, and it is to ensure that we're getting our communities to the places that they need to be. School, work, doctor's appointments, just living and enjoying their lives in New York City. So that is a critical part of our fight. I'm so thrilled to stand alongside other strap hangers and other advocates and New Yorkers across the state that are demanding that we, what? Fix the MTA. Thank you so much. Let's get it done.
I think this may be someone's. So we've heard from Manhattan, we've heard from Queens, we've heard from Brooklyn. It is now time to bring it down to the boogie down, and that is from Assemblymember Dinowitz.
Finally, the mainland. So, you've heard about all the great things in this package of bills, but let me talk a little bit about math. So when I was a kid, and I might have been a kid earlier than some of you here, it cost 15 cents to get on the subway, right? 15 cents. Now, I never got a driver's license until I was like 30. So besides walking and biking a lot, I took a lot of buses and subways. 15 cents. The MTA would like to raise it to $3. Well, do the math. That's a 20-fold increase if they get their way on that. That's gone up. When I was a kid, we didn't have to pay to go to college. I went to Lehman College on the mainland in the Bronx. No tuition. Now people have to struggle in many cases to pay tuition. A lot of other things have gone up by huge amounts in all those years. But you know what hasn't gone up? I did a little Googling this morning. You know what the minimum wage was back then when the subway fare was 15 cents? It was $1.25 an hour. Now it's $15 an hour. Do the math. That's an increase of 13, 12. So the minimum wage has not risen nearly as much as all these other costs have gone up. Look at what average incomes were then. Incomes have not gone up nearly as much as these increases. And back then, for many, if not most families, it took one income to support the family. Now families with two incomes are struggling to survive. And you know what else was back then? There were income tax rates, I think, as high as 90%. So when I hear super wealthy people whining about the possibility of it going up another half a point, it's really laughable. So everything that costs the people of our communities over the years has gone up tremendously. But income, but wages, salaries, none of that has gone up nearly as much. So people can't afford an increase in the fare. What they can afford is better service. We need to have better service. And we need to have, especially in the Bronx, of course, free buses for everybody. And you know, that's not a pipe dream. Bus service is really a fraction of the total cost of running the MTA, yet huge numbers of people take those buses. I know in the Bronx, and I've said it before, if we want to go cross-borough, we don't have a subway. You know, all roads do not lead to Manhattan. All people do not work in Manhattan, although I do love Manhattan, my fellow Manhattanites. We need ways to get around, and people take buses. Older people take buses. People going to doctors take buses. Young people going to school take buses. We need the free bus service, and that is really an important part of what we're talking about here. So I just want to say thank you to all my colleagues surrounding me here, because if we can get this done, and I know we can get it done, because the numbers don't lie, then it will bring huge improvements to our city. So thank you all for allowing me to say a few words.
Thank you, sir. So if we're in the Bronx, we might as well stay in the Bronx, and we're going to hear from Assemblymember Amanda Septimo.
going to be brief because so many important things have already been said, and I know we want to hear from the other speakers. And I won't speak about the merits of fixing the MTA, the importance of the frequency increasing, the importance of staving off the fare hike, and making sure that we get free buses, especially in the Bronx, because my colleagues have already covered that. And I'm here to echo those sentiments, but I'm also here to highlight that many of these types of press conferences happen around this time of year in Albany. Every single one of these people here represents a different issue that we are working on for New Yorkers. This is the year where we are going to fix the MTA, but we are also going to protect tenants. We're also going to expand access to universal childcare. We're going to make sure that we're investing in industries that are growing and that serve everyday working New Yorkers. We are going to make sure that we are delivering for New Yorkers in a way that counters the false narrative of scarcity in this place. We know that we don't have to choose between crumbling infrastructure and schools that don't serve our kids. That is a lie. We are here to say we are going to fix the MTA and do all of those other things because New Yorkers deserve it. And so I want to thank every single one of my colleagues for standing bravely in this fight and every other one, because New Yorkers deserve us to show up every single day on every issue. And this year and every year forward, we will tax the ultra wealthy, and we will do everything we can to make sure we're standing up for New Yorkers who expect it from us. Let's fix the MTA. Thank you.
So now we're going to go from the Bronx to the far Rockaways.
Well, it's far Rockaway, but I'll take the extra S. So, good morning, everyone. Much of everything has been said by the great speakers before me, but I want to make sure that we bring it into the perspective of the outer boroughs. When I think of my district in the Rockaways and all across different parts of Southeast Queens, I think about the transit desert that is our community. But also, I think about Queens, a borough that I share with Assemblymember Mondani, and many of my other colleagues are representing Queens. And the entire borough itself is a transit desert with very little access to train infrastructure. So when we're talking about fixing the MTA, that means improving bus service so that we can get from point A to point B. When we're talking about fixing the MTA, that's making sure that our Black, Brown, Asian American constituents can be able to get to cultural events, to get across the city, to be connected to resources. Not only is this a social issue, but it's an economic issue. And so we want to make sure we're able to move people from point A to point B. And so I thank my colleague, Assemblywoman Gonzalez-Rojas, because she's been pushing for 6-minute service. Can we give her a big round of applause? And why that 6-minute service is important is because districts like mine that take an hour and 45 minutes to cross, earlier this year I did it, and a quarter of that travel time came from wait time, waiting for the next bus and waiting for the next bus after. The folks who are gathered here behind me, and I want to thank Assemblymember Mondani because he's always building coalitions. The folks behind me represent well over 1 million people, plus. And so if we want to move those 1 million people from point A to point B, it requires us to invest in our one strongest economic driver in this city, and that's our trains, and that's our buses, and we can do it in this budget. We can fix the MTA, we can freeze fares, and we can set the goal and achieve that goal of making buses free here in the city of New York. So we got a fight ahead of us, and I'm thankful for the fight ahead of us because I got a good team. We got a good team. We got a good coalition. Thank you, Assemblymember Mamdani.
Always.
Let's steal this.
And now it is time to go to someone who gave us the best Valentine's Day speech here in Albany about the MTA. We have Emily Gallagher.
Well, it's hard to live up to my previous speeches. I'm sorry. But I am Emily Gallagher, and I represent Northern Brooklyn, Greenpoint, and Williamsburg, which is the fastest growing area in New York State. And I can tell you that we have not kept up with the MTA service as our constituency has grown and grown and grown. And this has added to already dire problems in my district. My district has one of the highest asthma rates in the city, alongside my friends in the Bronx. And one of the reasons why is because of the pollution from the bridges that cross over the river into Manhattan. So as we are having delays, having bad bus service, having buses that just don't come at all, having the G train, where you already heard about all my feelings about the G train, we're working on it. We have to, many people are turning to taking Ubers or buying a car, and this is exacerbating congestion, and it's also creating a pollution problem. And we are supposed to be moving away from that now. My big passion in the Assembly is environmental justice and trying to prevent the catastrophic climate collapse that we're coming up for. So we really need to be fixing the MTA, not just for ourselves, but for the future, and also for the planet that we live on. The MTA is a gift that New York City created over 100 years ago, and so many other cities have copied us. It's time that we show them that we are the original, and we can do it just as good or better. So thank you very much for bringing us all together, and I am very proud to stand in coalition, and I can't wait until all subways and buses are free. But for now, I will take my 2 buses in Brooklyn. Thank you.
So I want to now pass it over to the chair of the Aging Committee, Assemblymember Ron Kim.
Thank you. Thank you. Give it up to Zoran. Thank you. I represent Flushing, New York, the second most congested and the most busiest district in the state of New York after Midtown, Herald Square. We have dozens and dozens of buses. We have a 7 train. We have people from Long Island, Bayside, to get to Main Street, to get to work, working class families that have been waiting 30, 45 minutes on the way to work, on the way back to work. And every minute that they wait, it's an economic cost to the city and state of New York. That's why what Khalil said earlier is absolutely correct. This isn't charity, it's economic investment, especially at a time when all signs point to a recession. I'm not trying to fearmonger, this is pure economics. We are heading into a recession where we need to invest in working class families to recover as quickly from recession. If we divest, the recession will last longer and people will suffer. We will be punishing the poor, and that's not right.
That's not right.
So I join my colleagues. I love this coalition. And as Emily said, it's time we activate one of the greatest agencies that we've ever created in the history of this country, MTA, Port Authority. These are the purest sign of democracy that government can work. But we haven't activated it. We just let the private markets take its place. If we let the governor tax the writers, the tax students, the working class people, consumers, that is not the way to balance the budget. It will hurt our economy in the long run. So let's invest in them, and let's invest in MTA. Thank you.
Let's hear it one more time for Ron Kim. So I want to now pass it over to someone who has been standing with us from the day that we launched this very campaign. He is a new member of the Assembly, but he is one who has already jumped straight into these fights. That's Assemblymember Tony Simone.
Thank you, Assemblymember Zoran Mandani, for your leadership on this. Thank you to the transit activists who've been in Albany so many times. Look, we need a more livable, equitable, safer city. How do you create a safer city? You have crowded public transportation. I like a crowded subway. I often take it to work with my posse on the way out on a Saturday night. I love a free bus in the summer when it's hot. You want to be on that air-conditioned bus taking in the sights of my cool district, which is the 75th. Chelsea, Hell's Kitchen, Upper West Side, Broadway, Times Square. It's the heart of New York City. Sorry to everyone else's districts. I love your districts too. I've rarely left my district since I've been in office, but the way you make a safer, equitable city is by fixing the MTA. It's common sense, and it's not this like negotiation we should have all the time. It should be a dedicated line in the budget. I'm happy and proud that the one house from the Assembly put in the pilot program for 2 buses per borough. We need more of that. We need to support our working class. The only way we, as Ron Kim very greatly put. As a recession could hit us, we need to support our working class even more so. They take the bus and subway, and we need to find a way of taxing the well-to-do to fund that dedicated funding stream. So the next time, I hope, when we revisit this again as the budget concludes, that to create a safer, more equitable city, we have to fix the MTA.
Thank you. Yeah. And now please put your hands together to hear it from Assemblywoman Yudelka Tapia.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember Mandani, for putting us together for this coalition. And I am from the Boogie Down Bronx. And we know that as one of the poorest boroughs and counties, not only in the city of New York, but in the whole nation, we suffer more from that, from not having the equity that transportation brings to our communities. And it's the waiting 10 minutes, waiting 20 minutes for one. For example, this week, the D train, that is one of the major ones in our state, is not running from 161st to the 223. What our people that have to go to work gonna do to get to work when the buses are not working either? They have to wait half an hour, and only that, they go 5 to 3 miles per hour when they're going. So it's imperative that we continue the fight. It's true, we put so much of the money in our one house budget, but we need to push for more. The transportation is economic justice, because it allows us and our communities to actually get to their jobs, get to their schools, and make sure that they move and the mobility that is needed and that is done through transportation. And that's what is actually determining how our communities are progressing. The more mobility that we have, the more we progress. And that goes for all and every single one of our communities. Woo! Thank you. Thank you for putting this together. I am proud to be standing along with all of you fighting for this. And let's do it.
Woo! Let's do it. And now we're going to switch it back over to the Senate to hear from our colleague, Senator Brad Hoylman.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Thanks for organizing this, Assemblymember. State Senator Brad Hoylman Siegel from the west side of Manhattan, proudly representing the ACE and 123 along the west side of Manhattan. And, you know, in a few minutes, we're going to be at a press conference for the Invest in Our New York campaign. And these campaigns are inextricably linked between raising corporate taxes from the most wealthy companies in the city and state of New York to fund mass transit so we can get the 6-minute service that we all are campaigning for, as well as ending the 40-year tax exemption for Madison Square Garden that would, in the Senate one house, contribute $43 million a year directed to making certain that we can, in fact, fix the MTA. Thank you very much, Assemblymember.
Woo! $43 million, that's almost enough to pay for the free bus pilot that we are talking about across every single borough, right? And so if we're talking about the ACE, we have to take it over to Brooklyn and hear from Assemblywoman Latrice Walker.
Yes, well, we don't have the E or the 1. I do have the A train, the C train, the 2, and the 3 trains. And of course, a number of buses that go through our communities each and every day. And the amazing American story that this tells is that this train line and the inadequacies of our system can go from abject poverty to places where people are still complaining about the same service no matter what your socioeconomic status is. This is an issue that binds us. This is an issue that makes us all proud to be New York City residents, no matter where you live, no matter what your zip code is. And the message is clear, that the MTA has to be fixed. We have to make sure that it is accessible, that it is affordable, because we know that it is essential to the lifeblood and the working communities of New York City. And so I am proud to stand with my colleagues here in solidarity to say that we need free services. Yes, because you not being able to get to your probation officer, or you not being able to get to school, or you not being able to get to work simply because you cannot afford the fare should not be a barrier to being an amazing, civic-minded community member of New York City. I always remember the one day when I was still in school, in college actually, and I had to make a difficult decision one day. And that decision was I going to pay for my transportation to get from my internship at the New York City Law Department, or was I going to buy a hero because I was hungry and walk across the Brooklyn Bridge? And guess what that decision was? I bought the hero and I walked the bridge. And so at that particular moment in time, I had to make a decision on whether or not I was going to eat or whether or not I was going to take the subway. And no one should have to make those types of decisions ever again. This is why we are here in the state legislature, to fight so that our own lived experiences that we know are unjust and unjust don't ever have to be felt and affected by any other New Yorker. So thank you, and let's fix the MTA.
We're going to keep it in Brooklyn, and we're going to pass it over to Assemblywoman Rodneyce Bichotte.
Thank you. Thank you so much for putting this press conference together. It's much needed. My name is Assemblymember Rodneyce Bichotte Hermlin. I represent the most center part of Brooklyn, Flatbush, and we represent the 2 train, the 5 train, the 3 train. And I just want to say that, you know what, I'm tired of every year, same issue, demanding to fix the MTA. Many years ago, well, not many years ago, a few years ago, we were fighting for congestion pricing. And I specifically wanted to make sure that we had guidelines set in place to make sure that whatever revenue that is gained from all of these initiatives should make sure that it's directed to fixing the MTA. I was raised on the subways, okay? Working families across New York need a fixed, clean, safe MTA to get to their jobs, to get to their schools, to get where they need to get to. Last year, we passed the Cedric's Law, which was to make sure that the MTA put surveillance cameras on all the platforms. It was a big deal. And again, this is something that we've been fighting for, making sure that our transit system is safe and sound. So here we are once again, trying to raise money off of working class backs, people who've been truly dedicated to building this city, and we're penalizing them by raising the fare to $3. We cannot afford that. We are not getting raises while inflation is going up. There are many ways that we can increase and get funding. As you heard, there's a whole bunch of other initiatives where we can tax the wealthier, tax corporates. I know, because I used to work in corporate America. There's a lot of money out there, okay? Trust me. So if we're going to get money, let's not get it off of the poor, the working class, the low income. Let's not get it off of the people who need to get to where they need to get to make a living. Let's get it from those who can afford to share their wealth in making New York City a better place. So I stand here with my colleagues. I stand here with all the advocates and tell MTA, fix the MTA. No fare hike. Woo! Thank you.
And now, before we go to my borough of Queens, we are going to hear from a brother from the Bronx, John Zaccaro Jr.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment to thank my colleague, Assembly Member Zoran Mamdani, and my colleague, JGR, who was here, who have been staunch advocates on this legislation. So good morning. My name is John Zaccaro. I represent the Bronx. Woo! And I'm proud to stand here together with my colleagues in the Assembly and the Senate majority to call on the governor to include this vital funding in the final budget. We all know that when costs for goods and services essential to our daily lives increase, it is the working class individuals, it is the working class families, and anyone already struggling with financial insecurity are the ones that are most impacted. The $197 million in funding to freeze the $275 fare freeze, combined with $50 million in funding for a free bus pilot program included in both one-house budget proposals, demonstrates that this legislature is committed to addressing this critical issue.
Yes, sir.
And so I just want to take a moment to thank my colleagues, to thank the advocates, to thank the staff and the volunteers who have worked incredibly hard to get us to this moment. And it's time that we get this moment to the finish line. And that's why we're here today to say it's time to fix the MTA. It's time to make sure that we prioritize working class New Yorkers in this budget. And we need to make sure that we can do everything that we can, not only to make sure that we have an MTA that's more safer, not to make sure that we have an MTA that is more cleaner, but one that is equitable and making sure that it is more reliable for the folks who need it most. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. God bless you all.
Woo! Woo! And you know, when we talk about fixing the MTA, we're talking about what my colleague has spoken about, making it faster. And as part of making it faster, there's a piece of legislation to expand the cameras that are used to ensure that buses are moving quickly on the lanes that they drive on, that we do not have cars that are double parked and keeping our constituents stuck in traffic, and none other than Assemblywoman Alicia Heineman is holding that bill right here in the Assembly.
Let me shake your hand for being literally the loudest and the most consistent voice in the room when it comes to fixing the MTA. And I think that speaks volumes about this body, because it's all Assembly members. Oh, sorry, Jabari. And then there was one. But it is a real honor to serve with members who understand this struggle in commuting in New York City. I represent a district that has no subway stations. So buses are part of our daily life. We got bus lanes, and a lot of the drivers weren't happy, including my daughter, who I had to hear from every day. But the idea is this, that buses have to move, and they have to move faster. So we have to get the buses from point A to point Z. And you should see the Q5 and the 41, when they move on those bus lanes, they're about their business, getting people to the subways to get to work every morning. And home in the evenings, because we see the commuters how they line up for their buses. Anything we could do to make buses move faster, which I really need this in our Assembly One House, to make our buses move faster. Because there's no point having a bus lane if every other brother and their mother is double parked in front of a bus. So I want to say that it is a total package. Freezing fares, because if you move the city of New York and you're always asked to do more as a commuter, why do we keep giving back to the city? So I really have to thank our colleagues here, Zoran, for doing the real yeoman's work of making sure to meet and work with the MTA, so thank you. My district thanks you if we can get these bus camera bills. I know they're gonna give me a hard time first, but for all of those people who take the bus and our children who take the bus every day, they want these buses to move faster. Bus cameras would do that. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to teach people how to live right. So with that, I will pass it on to the MC, and let's just say fix the MTA. Thank you.
Now, right now, I have buses in my district that go 5 miles an hour. I'm going to pass it over to somebody who runs faster than that, Assemblyman Steve Raga.
I don't. How you doing, guys? I just want to thank Zoran for bringing us together. I'm Assemblyman Steve Raga. I represent District 30 in Western Queens. And I just want to say that I'm new like a few other folks here, and I'm really kind of a little annoyed that I've developed some sort of reputation for being late. Yeah, I take the bus every day. Yeah, I take the train every day. Yeah, I'm in the bus and in the train, and I have to wait going foot by foot in traffic. So yes, this is the issue that impacts us all. We want every day I wake up and I'm like, am I gonna walk 35 minutes to my district office, or am I gonna wait 40 minutes for the bus and then another 20 minutes on to get to the office? So this impacts folks in my district and live and work and make sure they're getting to work on time, making sure they're getting to school on time, visit their parents, their family on time. And this is an issue, and thank you for fighting for this in our one house. Hopefully we could do more as we move on to fix the MTA, and as long as we're working together with our colleagues here at the Assembly and the Senate, I know that we're going to make sure that we fight for all New Yorkers here in the next few days, and we're going to keep pushing for years to come. So thanks a lot, guys.
We are going to have our final speaker now, which is the co-chair of the Asian Pacific Task Force. We have Assemblywoman Grace Lee.
I want to thank Assemblymember Zohran Mamdani for his leadership here. We know, as all of my colleagues have said, that this issue touches every single New Yorker. But to raise fares is going to hit our working class families the most. I represent Lower Manhattan, which many people think is a transit hub. But in the lowest income areas of my district, it's a transit desert. So when you cut bus service, when you're not investing in the MTA and making it more accessible, who is it hurting? It's hurting our low-income and working-class families. So I'm here to fight for safer, faster bus service, for real investments to make the MTA accessible, and I will do that and fight to the end to get this in the final budget. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have been here joined by more than 20 of our colleagues. We also have a colleague, Assemblyman Alvarez, who I just want to shout out over here. You know, it is a very simple message that we have been delivering today. Our one houses delivered historic investments in the MTA. We had a rejection of the $3 fare hike that was proposed by the governor. We proposed funding $50 million in a free bus pilot, unprecedented in New York City, which would have 2 free buses per borough, so 10 in total. And in the Senate, there was the inclusion of the expansion of the ABLE cameras that Assemblywoman Heineman was talking about. These things, plus the missing link of frequency, that gets us to the place that our constituents need to go. And that place may be home, it may be work, it may be play, it may be a house of worship. That place is wherever they want to go, and it is up to us in Albany to deliver that for them. Because the MTA is a state-run authority, and it is about time that we fix it. So we are calling on the governor to protect these investments in the final budget, to expand them, and then we will bring them home to our constituents, the working class people of New York City, who desperately need this, they deserve this, and they are about to experience this. Thank you very much.